During last week's U.S. congressional hearing on USAID, Congressman Scott Perry closed the stay in West Africa with the following comments.
Your money is $697 million annually, plus the shipments of cash funds madrasas, ISIS, Al Qaeda, Boko Haram. You are funding terrorism and it's coming through USAID. And it's not just Afghanistan.
In the aftermath of his comments, a number of prominent Nigerian voices spoke up in support of Congressman Perry's remarks. One of these voices was former Nigerian Foreign Minister Bolaji Ekoyemi, who said this in a subsequent TV interview with Arise News.
I served on the Boko Haram committee. Villagers kept telling us that in the middle of the night, helicopters piloted by white people kept landing and offloading guns, goods, and money to these people. They have no reason to lie to us.
Many, however, have treated the story with skepticism because for the most part, the idea that the US government would knowingly and actively fund and equate terrorists just seems unconscionable. Surely America is all about big business, and science and technology, and generous foreign aid, and sports, and show business, and cowboys, and apple pie, and Times Square, and Mount Rushmore. Surely the idea that Uncle Sam would arm and fund some group of semi-literate Islamists calling themselves Boko Haram, which literally translates to books forbidden, to wreak havoc in some economically underdeveloped country on the other side of the planet is a silly, fanciful conspiracy theory, right? Well, no, it's not. How do we know this? Because minus the name Boko Haram, this exact scenario that I just described has happened before. I'm going to let former US Secretary of State Hillary Clinton explain in her own words.
When the Soviet Union invaded Afghanistan, we had this brilliant idea that we were going to come to Pakistan and create a force of mujahideen, equip them with Stinger missiles and everything else to go after the Soviets inside Afghanistan.
We did it because we were locked in this struggle with the Soviet Union. We did not want to see them control Central Asia, and we went to work. And it was President Reagan in partnership with the Congress, led by Democrats, who said, you know what, sounds like a pretty good idea. Let's deal with the ISI and the Pakistani military, and let's go recruit these mujahideen. And great, let's get some to come from Saudi Arabia and other places, importing their Wahhabi brand of Islam so that we can go beat the Soviet Union. And guess what? They retreated. They lost billions of dollars, and it led to the collapse of the Soviet Union. So there's a very strong argument, which is, it wasn't a bad investment.
This operation run by the CIA was codenamed Operation Psycho. It financed the creation of the Afghan Mujahideen before and during the Soviet war in Afghanistan between 1979 and 1989. The program specifically recruited Islamist groups to fight the Soviets, leaning on their ideological conviction. Now, I know some struggle to accept the notion that Uncle Sam would knowingly and deliberately arm Islamist terrorists, despite America's supposed ham being founded around Christian ideals and identity. So I'll let former US National Security Advisor Zbigniew Brzezinski, who personally visited and addressed the Mujahideen, to add a few words of his own.
You know, that land over there is yours. You'll go back to it one day because your plight will prevail and you'll have your home, your mosque back again because your cause is right and God is on your side.
Now, for those who don't know, the creation of the Mujahideen to fight a proxy war against the Soviets was taken from a US foreign intelligence playbook, which has been used multiple times on multiple continents for similar reasons and with similar outcomes. It was used in Nicaragua when the so-called Contras were financed and armed by the CIA to fight against the country's left-wing Sandinista government. One of the byproducts of this engagement was the creation of Latin America's powerful drug lords who became wealthy enough to bully entire countries. In the case of Afghanistan, US support for Islamists resulted in Afghanistan becoming the world's first Wahhabi extremist theocracy, a crucible that simultaneously incubated both the Taliban and a handsome rich kid from Saudi Arabia who came to join the US-backed Holy War against the Red Army. His name? Osama bin Laden. You might know him as the founder of Al Qaeda.
All praises, honor, and glory unto the Most High, Yahweh Ba'asham Hawashai, Bahasham Rakakwadash, double honors to the elders and the apostles of the Great Millstone, and salutations to all you sincere Kiam. And this is your brother Abawan back again with another video through the spirit and power of Yahweh Ba'asham Yawashai, Bahasham Rakakwadash, all praises and glories due. Right. And yeah, so I don't know what I'm going to title this video. I wanted to title it "Don't Forget About This Wine from Babylon the Great," right? Because whenever we speak on the doctrine, right, the wine of Babylon the Great, which is basically the philosophies, the ways, the culture, right? The dogma, the doctrines that are promoted and pushed and spread throughout the world by America, Babylon the Great. We're always dealing with, which of course it is true. We're always dealing with the alternative lifestyles, the wicked practices that are against the laws, the statutes, and the commandments of the Most High Yahweh Basham Yahweh. Right, so let's get this. Let's get this. That should be the book of Jeremiah. I think that's 51 or so. Yeah, it is. Yeah, it is. So this is the book of Jeremiah 51, verse 7. Babylon hath been a golden cup in Yahweh's hand that made all the earth drunken. The nations have drunken of her wine, therefore the nations are mad. Right. So even the scriptures clearly tells you that the doctrine, the philosophies, the teaching, which is of course referring to the wine, because that is what the wine represents. Okay, it is a metaphor for the philosophy, like the doctrine, the dogma. When I say that, what I say is basically the Babylonian mindset, the Babylonian philosophy, or the American slash Western mindset and philosophy, which you see that so much of the world is believing to be a more advanced, more knowledgeable, more superior philosophy than whatever else exists, including the scriptures. And part of that, okay, is not just the LGBTQ lifestyle, not just your democracy that's wicked as hell. It's not just all the other things that Esau pushes on the throughout the four corners of the earth, right? The different mindsets, right? The Epicureanism, the hedonism, the narcissism, the focus on self, the love for money, right? Which is where you got to get from your Edomite Babylonian capitalism, but also, okay, but also these actions that we saw in that video, where you have, America, Babylon the Great, basically setting up these different organizations and these different groups, right, in foreign countries, especially third world countries, especially countries that are predominantly Jake. So that's the so-called Negroes, Latinos, and Native American Indians, the scattered Israelites that are scattered throughout the four corners of the earth, and specifically, and speaking of the southern and northern kingdom, so Africa, right, and mainly West Africa and Central Africa as well, and also South America, okay, because in South America you had the contrasts, right, that were set up by what's the name of this demon again, Ronald Reagan, I believe, during that period, and of course you have the Boko Haram groups and different and other terrorist groups that are operating here in West Africa, and then you find out that these groups are actually, are actually financed by USAID, right? So you saw the leaks of, or rather not the leaks, but rather what Elon Musk showed, that USAID was secretly funding and sending all these millions to different terrorist groups and also, alternative lifestyle groups that are in various nations, right? Most especially, and you see that, in those nations where Esau was sending this money to, right? You saw that the majority of them were Israelite nations, okay, especially in the LGBTQ thing. But the main nations that have been damaged and that have had this done to them the most are Israelite nations, especially the Northern Kingdom while they're in South America, because when Esau practiced that their CIA espionage on Jake in the Southern Kingdom, whether it's with Cuba and Fidel Castro, or whether it's the contrast like I mentioned before in Nicaragua, that was during what's his face, Ronald Reagan's time, or whether it's Venezuela, I think it was Maduro, right? And even Colombia, the is that even Colombia, the CIA meddling that ended up creating what's this guy's name again, that drug lord, I've forgotten his name. They did a series on him, and I watched that series. Escobar, yeah, Pablo Escobar. That is basically part of the wine of America, Babylon the Great. The use of this their influence and their power to set up these terrorist groups, right? Set up these groups that are basically that their purpose is to destabilize nations, okay? And by destabilizing the nations, they keep the people in a perpetual state of poverty, in a perpetual state of, they keep the nation in a perpetual state of poverty, right? No economic advancement, and without economic advancement, the people are not going to be able to develop, and the nation is not going to be able to develop as well, okay? So basically what they do, right, and let me go into this, right, so basically what they do is exactly just that, right? They set up these terrorist groups, they set up these groups of interest, groups of American interest that are made, okay, solely to keep the country in a state of impoverishment for America's sake. And it doesn't just have to deal with terrorists as well. You also have these what they call economic hitmen, right, which influence governments, set up puppet leaders, right, and make sure that bills and laws get passed that benefits Babylon the Great more than it benefits the people of that nation. And a lot of this can still be attributed to the curses, right? Which is, the main one I'm thinking about is that a stranger shall get in their land and, get up over there. And it shows you that even till now, that Esau Edom, right, is still oppressing our people, the so-called Negroes, Latinos, and Native American Indians, not just in America, Babylon the Great, but all over the earth with these actions. And that, and I've already done a video on that before, the US aid, but with the revelation of what US aid was spending money on, right, it just shows further how wicked America, Babylon the Great is, and it's also soured the relationship even more between America, Babylon the Great, and the other nations. So now in real time we are seeing the reasons why the horns of the beast will hate the whore and choose to burn her with fire, because even now, right now, you have Europe, right, distancing themselves from America, Babylon the Great, and the same thing in the UN because of this Russia and Ukraine situation. Because now they are seeing, and you're also seeing in real time, right, along with all these European leaders, okay, something that is being made public, the US basically abandoning Ukraine in favor of Russia, okay, which of course, that situation is only going to get worse. It's only going to make things worse for Europe, right? Not America or Babylon the Great. So let's just go into this. Let's just go into this. So this is the book of Deuteronomy 18, and I'm just going to get the main points, okay? Which is basically, what you see Esau doing, where he comes into this country with his espionage, right? Not only is he setting up terrorist groups in a lot of the in a lot of these Israelite countries and these third world countries, especially here in Africa and the Middle East. In South America, it's more just set up puppet leaders, set up some groups of interest that will ultimately push policy, right? Push public opinion towards their positions or towards their agenda. And that's why I believe in I believe it was Argentina or Mexico. You had abortion basically legalized in the nation, right? And I believe through the spirit that this is just me speaking as a man, of course, but I believe through the spirit that these the policies of America, the CIA, right, the FBI, okay, let's just say the CIA had something to do with that, right? They influenced that decision being made. So yeah, let's get this. So now Deuteronomy 28 verse 43. The stranger that is within thee shall get up above thee very high, and thou shalt come down very low. He shall lend to thee, and thou shalt not lend to him. He shall be the head, and thou shalt be the tail. Right, and these practices basically keep the nation in a state of, I'm not saying, but they keep the nation in a state of poverty. And I'm sure that you saw what happened between Trump and Zelensky, where basically Zelensky came to Trump for more aid, right, in the form of weapons, like, for the war effort. And what Trump basically said is that Zelensky is going to have to pay the U.S. government back with the Ukrainian resources, right? Which of course Ukraine, you have a lot of farmland in Ukraine. I believe Ukraine also dealing in natural gas. I think a lot of the resources that Ukraine has because of this war, well, they are unable to. Let's see if I can get some of that. Let's see if I can get some of that. So yeah, what resources are Ukraine rich in? The country is home to the continent's largest reserves of lithium, titanium, and uranium, according to the data from the Ukrainian Geologic Survey. Ukraine possesses 5% of the world's mineral resources, including 23 of the 50 materials determined critical by the US government. And there you have it. So that's the reason why Trump is talking about Zelensky is going to have to run some of those resources in order to repay America, Babylon the Great, for the aid that it was giving all throughout, the war between Ukraine and Russia. And if you actually go into it, I believe what they are like giving over hundreds of billions of dollars, right? And these are the kind of tactics that America, Babylon the Great, often uses against Jake in West Africa and South America, where they will give you a little bit of foreign aid, right? And then they now come at the back end and now say that, oh, well, because we have been giving you this foreign aid, you are going to have to repay us with cheaper mineral resources, right? And that's exactly the same thing that they are doing with Ukraine now. So this is an example of the curses falling upon Esau, Edom, right? With them being treated like Jake and a lot of the heathen that are under the foot of the wine of Babylon the Great would be treated. Okay, but let's just keep going into that. Let's keep going into this. Let's keep going into this. So let's keep going into this now. Deuteronomy 28 verse 49. Yahweh shall bring a nation against thee from far, from the end of the earth, as swift as the eagle flieth, a nation whose tongue thou shalt not understand, a nation of fierce countenance, which shall not regard the person of the old, nor shew favor to the young. And this is the main point right here. And he shall eat the fruit of thy cattle, and the fruit of thy land, until thou be destroyed, which also shall not leave thee either corn, wine, or oil, or the increase of thy kind, or flocks of thy sheep, until he have destroyed thee. And that's exactly what America. That's exactly what Esau, right? Let me just say America, because it's not just America that is dealing in this. Okay, it's all these Edomites, man. It's all Esau. Both the UK, both France, as you see in places like Mali, Niger, Burkina Faso, and all the other francophone countries here in West Africa, right? They are also dealing in the same thing, Esau, Edom, where they come in, they where they come in, right, and they forcefully exploit the nation and steal the resources, because that's exactly what they are doing under the disguise of a fair trade. But it's not really a fair trade. Take for example, here in Nigeria, whenever we sell oil or crude oil to Esau, right, because we didn't have any refineries. We do have one right now, the Dangote refinery, but 2 years ago, here in Nigeria, we didn't have a single oil refinery. So whenever we sell the raw crude oil to Esau, we would have to buy the refined product back again from Esau, right? So America would basically take the crude oil, refine it in you had refineries in places like the Middle East, and I think it's Qatar, right? Places like the UK, they would refine it, and they would now have to buy the refined oil in order to actually use, because as the crude oil is, it's unusable. It has to be refined and separated into the various parts, petroleum, oil, diesel, so on and so forth. And that's exactly what we were doing. So that was us taking a loss right there, because the normal price, and because we could not refine it, we couldn't take advantage of the full price of the crude oil. Okay, and it's pretty much the same thing with a lot of these critical resources and minerals. Things like uranium, things like lithium, like coal, like the coltan that you see in the Congo as well. A lot of these resources aren't refined in Africa. They are shipped as raw as they are to other countries to be refined, and then we now have to, we that are here in Africa, also jig in South America as well, because it's the same thing going on. Now to go and buy the refined minerals in order for us to use it in our nations, right? And that is exactly what this is dealing with right here. At these Edomites, right? Not just Esau. They even have Moab as well, running illegal mining operations in Africa. Some of them got caught in Kenya, some of them got caught in not Central Africa, in the Congo, right? That they are running these illegal mining operations as well, in order to send those resources to be processed in China. Okay, so you have these nations that are basically eating of the fruits of the land and just taking advantage of the resources and keeping you Nigerians, right, keeping you jigs impoverished by destroying your economy and keeping and stagnating your economic growth, and even sometimes just straight up reversing it, right, pushing your economy back and keeping your stalling your economic growth in order to enrich themselves. And that's exactly what these Edomites are doing, man. That's exactly what they're doing with these situations right here. You have your CIA espionage operations. Like, let me give an example of one. This right here, Operation Cyclone. Where it's basically Operation Cyclone was the code name for the United States Central Intelligence Agency program to arm and finance the Afghan Mujahideen, right? And I have Mujahideen, the definition right here. So Mujahideen, and it reads, guerrilla fighters in Islamic countries, especially who are fighting against non-Muslim forces, right? So that's basically what Mujahideen is. So yeah, in literal sense, it means one who struggles on behalf of Islam. In recent years, however, it has been adopted by those who consider themselves engaged in armed defense of Muslim lands. So a lot of these your most Islamic extremists are actually Slovakia. But as I was saying, a lot of these your Islamic extremists are actually set up by America, Babylon the Great. We definitely know that, it has been said so many times that Osama, which was the leader of Al Qaeda at the time, which a lot of these terrorist groups like Boko Haram, even IS, are ultimately branches of Al Qaeda. And I believe there's another one I'm thinking about, I can't really remember. I think it is IS, And funny how all these groups never really attack the state of Israel, even if we see all the things that but that's beside the point. Let me leave that out, right? So yeah. So Operation Cyclone was the code name for the United States Central Intelligence Agency's program to arm and finance Afghan Mujahideen in Afghanistan from 1979 to 1992. Prior to and during the military intervention by the USSR in support of the Democratic Republic of Afghanistan. So now you are seeing the reason why US troops were in Afghanistan for over 20 years. It was basically to keep Afghanistan from adopting communism, okay? Because once and this happened in a lot of different nations, right? In the fight for against communism and the quote-unquote Red Scare, Esau was going around basically destabilizing nations that were even so much as thinking of adopting communism. Like, for example, the Vietnam, right? In Vietnam, that was the reason for the Vietnam War as well, because the Vietnamese people were about to adopt communism, right? And also in Cuba as well. I think, yeah, communism as well in Cuba, that's why to this day, you still have sanctions being put on Cuba. Let me just make sure that my information is 100% accurate, right? So let's check that. Yeah, this is right here. So in February 1962, President John F. Kennedy placed an embargo on trade between the United States and Cuba in response to certain actions taken by the Cuban government, and directed the Departments of Commerce and Treasury to implement the embargo, which remains in place today. Right. So basically, there is no trade going on between the US and Cuba, and I believe that, you know what, this is just, then take this with a grain of salt, but I believe that that also applies to the allies of the United States. So they also have a trade embargo on Cuba as well, right? So and this is just an example of the practices that are being done by America, Babylon the Great, all over the earth. And it's not just in one part of the world, but really it's everywhere in which they are basically keeping and destabilizing these nations in order to be able to keep US hegemony, right? Keep the US at the top. So that's the reason why you see, America, Babylon the Great as a superpower, not because, it is actually a great nation or anything like that, but rather it is because it keeps other nations subjugated in order to be over them. Okay, so with that, let me just end the video right there. Once again, all praises, honor and glory unto the Most High Yahweh Ba'asham Yahweh Ba'asham Rakakodash Wa Abad Babal Shalom. And through the Spirit, I hope you are calm and you are quite edified. Shalom.